Welcome to the Daily MBA, where business wisdom is served fresh and fast, straight from one of the top MBA programs in the world. I'll give you summaries of my lectures and readings, as well as the most important insights gained from an MBA, so you can apply all of this knowledge in every business. Let's get started. On today's episode, I'm going to talk about the importance of incentives, because all of us know that incentives are what's driving the economy today. Most people are doing something because they have the incentive to do so. And we, as humans, tend to respond to either good or bad incentives. Yet, very few companies offer pay conditional on performance, or probably only for sales roles. But in my personal experience, I've never had my compensation be tied to my performance, and this is only done in very senior levels. So why is that? We're going to have a couple problems, and these are going to be generalized by two things. First, moral hazard, and this means I can't see what you do. This is a very important topic when we're talking about insurance and risk, which is where I used to work in, because others may do something in an unwanted way because I can see them. So, for example, you may get your car insurance and then you may burn your car to get the money back. Hopefully that doesn't happen to a lot of people, but it's a moral hazard because I can't see what you do, and this is what happens to companies. They can't see you when you're working. The second problem, it's called adverse selection, and this means I can't see what you are or what you know. And so others are going to be hiding what they know or how they are because this is invisible. And I'm going to put a very simple example for this. Let's imagine that you're just starting your work and your company tells you, oh, if you finish this, in 1 week we'll be very happy. And you actually finish it on the first 3 days. Would you call your boss to tell her, or would you wait? This is a dilemma that's going to lead us to this problem of adverse selection. Because some people might say, of course, you have to show them that you're very good. But then others might say, if I show that I'm very good, then they're going to expect me to finish up all their deliverables and all their projects in half of the time that I was assigned to do. And so this is going to lead us to some of the problems that hopefully not everyone is doing them, but they exist. And if we were to pay on incentives or compensation, for example, this would be an issue. So we have moral hazard or adverse selection. And so from this two, we can see many possible problems that are arising. And one of them, it's called multitasking. And this means that incentives exist and they are correlated to something that we care about, but they're going to have the opposite effect. So let's say the incentives are tied to specific measurable outcomes, then the employees may try to prioritize this incentive over their other tasks that didn't have any incentive. And even if the second tasks were also very important for the firm's goal. One good example that we could think of this is it's like policemen that are being incentivized to give tickets. They're not even going to be incentivized in stopping crime or stuff like that, but they're going to just put as many tickets on cars as they can because they're going to receive an incentive of the pay based on that, even if the most important part of their job is stopping crime. So how do you solve this? How do you stop people that are multitasking and only doing the things that are being incentivized and not the rest of the activities that they should do? First, you should limit the task that it's being asked to do. Then second, you should try to only incentivize a task that's being observable. And third, if the task is unobservable, so kind of like the stopping crime one, then you should incentivize a highly correlated and observable one instead. because if not, you might incur into the multitasking problem. A second problem that we may find with incentives are when you get team incentives. Because if production is based on the output of a team and the individual contributions not observable, then free riders will join and they will start winning on these incentives. And so teams are very hard to incentivize because they must be big enough to solve the issue on hand, but they should be small enough to be effective and lean in balancing out all of this competition is going to make all of this incentivizing very tough. So how can we solve this? First thing is that you should keep the team very close together so they can monitor each other and therefore they can punish each other if someone's being a free rider. And then if you can't keep the same teams on your business, but you have to keep changing all the time for different teams, then maybe what's useful would be a middle manager or another person that's going to monitor the team that, even if you're paying someone to do it, might be even better than having no one monitor the team. Because then team is going to be able to work better and they're going to punish free riders and they're going to perform the work that they need. There's a third problem with incentives that's called the ratchet effect. And this means that workers won't show what they know or how they are if that information may change the work conditions. So this is leading back to what I was telling you at the beginning, the adverse selection. So what if someone doesn't want to prove that he or she is the best? If a worker shows that he or she is very efficient and this changes the work conditions, so maybe you'll be required to complete the work faster or you'll have even more work, they might not show up their true potential. So as a company, how can you solve this? Because you do want efficiency on your teams. You don't want people hiding who they are or what they know. So you should commit to a contract that's going to limit the ability to use the information that you know today to modify tomorrow's condition. And this is very easy to say, but it's very hard for companies. And that's why we have many people that are not showing their true potential because they're afraid of more work or worse conditions in the future. If they show their true potential as a company, you should get to an agreement or commit to a contract that's going to limit that ability that you have to change the conditions for tomorrow. And lastly, we also have a fourth problem that's called risk sharing. And this means that if part of the conditional payment comes from random conditions, so let's say you're working on real estate and part of your work belongs to how many deals you get, but you get to assign to a very bad area and your colleague gets assigned right next to university. So this is going to be unfair. And people, especially risk-averse workers, are not going to like this distribution of the incentives. So the incentives that are going to be related to luck variables like sales, being assigned the worst or the best selling location, are going to mean that if you're risk-averse, you want extra money for that luck, right? I would prefer a normal salary than having to be on a roulette to spinning either having the worst location or best location. So how do you solve it? And this is usually what companies are doing today, especially the big ones. You're going to give more risk to those that have more assets or more power, as they are less risk averse. So senior managers or VPs today, they are willing to have more risk on their salary because they are already earning a lot. And so they can have their bonus or extra compensation be on something conditional like sales because they already have something that they're going to pay rent with or they're going to cover up their normal expenses. So that's why big executives are going to be able to do this. And it's one of the ways in which we can think that only people that have more assets or powers can take into this risk that's related to being incentivized with something out of your control. So as you can see, even if incentives are given and the company's doing everything perfectly, we may find two limits. First, what if the person doesn't know how to complete a task? I'll pay you $1 million if you do this, but if I don't know how to do this, I will still be able to complete the task. So what happens is that training is usually needed when you do incentives, and this is a must and should be your takeaway. If you're planning on paying with incentives, you should also be training your colleagues, so they're all in similar conditions. And then the second limit might be that monetary incentives can crowd out all of these pro-social incentives, and so people may reduce their intrinsic motivation as soon as there is money in the game. And this is one of the first theories that took me a very long time to understand when I was studying organizational behavior back in my undergrad. But the thing is, if you do something because you like it, you'll have intrinsic motivation. But as soon as someone starts putting money on that thing, then it's going to be a bit more stressful. And this is going to take away part of your intrinsic motivation, because now your true motivation is going to be the money or the incentive. So you have to be careful on giving incentives to things that people already enjoy doing and they're doing without any exterior incentive, because their intrinsic motivation might be enough for that. One possible solution also to all of these things can be something that's called efficiency wages. And efficiency wages are going to be especially for actions that are difficult, just as all of the problems that we saw above, because giving incentives for working in things that are unobservable can be very hard. So how can you give an incentive for general effort, for people constantly doing their best? This is only going to happen if you pay a worker more than their outside option. So if you are one of the best paying companies in the market, you are the one that have the power now, because you could punish the worker for any bad outcomes just by firing him, and this fear of being fired and not finding any possible option that will match whatever he or she has with you is going to motivate them to outperform constantly in the company. So this is one of the ways that most big companies and tech companies are encouraging all of their workers today. And they're not putting their salary based on specific things and incentives. They're just giving very high salaries because they know if their workers aren't working enough and aren't satisfying all of their needed conditions, they might be gone and someone might take their role just as fast. So people are motivated to be doing their best every day. On my next episode, we'll study another type of motivation that you can use, and it's not related to money, but it's also going to be part of the contract. So be sure to check that out.